We play and call it work.
Hey folks, Janene from MiniWarGaming here with another how-to video for you. In this video, we're going to begin work on this Gale Force 9 purple worm. It's from their Dungeons & Dragons line, and we are going to start by getting that nice purple carapace on the back. As always, if you have suggestions for something you want to see in a future how-to video, please leave it down below in the comments. Now this model was prepped by being primed black, and then I coated it with a very thin layer of Abaddon black paint. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to airbrush a layer of Xereus Purple onto the Mini. Now Xereus Purple isn't one of the Citadel air colors, so we're going to go ahead and mix the paint ourselves. We're just going to use a clean dish, a little bit of the Xereus Purple paint, and we're going to mix that with clean water at about a 60-40 ratio. 60% paint, 40% water. I encourage you to use whatever medium you're comfortable with using in your airbrush. Water is just what I happen to like, but it's not for everyone. After I have my paint mixed, I'm going to go ahead and dump it into my Awada HP CS Eclipse. I've got this hooked up to a Badger air compressor set to about 25 psi, and I'm just going to spray this over these scales on the back. Now I tend to mix my paint to be pretty thin, so it's going to take me a couple layers to get a really nice coat of this purple. If you paint it with a thicker consistency, you might get the coverage more quickly. However, I'm more concerned with doing just lots of little controlled layers and building up the paint gradually instead of trying to get one really thick coat on right away. I also want to spray all of these scales on the underside of the jaw. And then once the first coat's dried, I'm going to go ahead and give it a second coat just to make sure that I get a really nice vibrant purple. Also, because of the way that these scales are sculpted, I need to tip the Mini and spray it from the opposite direction just to make sure that I get coverage everywhere and it's not going to be bald in some of the shadows. Alright, here's the worm after we've gotten the Xereus Purple entirely coated. Next, we're going to do another airbrushing layer of Genestealer Purple. Now this is a Citadel air color, however I don't have it on hand, so I'm going to mix my own just like I did with the Xereus Purple. And I'm going to take advantage of the way that these scales are sculpted. I've turned it so that when I spray it, I'm just hitting the top and I'm letting the scales block the shadowed sections. I'm not adding a lot of this paint, I really just kind of want to highlight the very middle of this carapace on both of the sides of this central back spine. And then I'm also going to quickly spray a highlight on the nose section as well. And a little bit of the front of this lower jaw. Alright, here's the worm after that Genestealer Purple highlight. This is the last step we're going to do with the airbrush, and we are going to transition over to doing some brush work to add the remaining highlights. Before I begin highlighting, I want to add just a little bit of Druchii Violet into some of these cracks to really control the shadow. If you look on the underside of these scales, there's a small section of kind of fleshy bits that hold all of this carapace together. And I'm just going to put this Druchii Violet along that section, and then I also want to hit the area where all of these scales transition into something that's kind of more like bone. I'm also going to put a little bit of this into the cracks that are sculpted on the head of the worm. There's a lot of small little scales that were sculpted onto the lower jaw, and since this area would be in a lot more shadow, we're going to hit it a little bit more heavily. We're also going to get this little section of skin where the jaw breaks, and then we want to get the gaps where all of the teeth are protruding from the mouth. Alright, here's the worm after the Druchii Violet has been applied. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a very light dry brush of Pink Horror. We're not going to add a lot of this color, we're kind of just catching the places that would be in the most highlight if the sun were shining right down on the Mini. This is just going to add a pop of brightness, since all of the rest of our highlights are going to be with a little bit more neutral colors. This is just going to add a little pop of very saturated color among all of the kind of neutral tones. You can also see as I'm dry brushing, I'm again using the sculpt of the Mini to my advantage, and I'm pulling my brush in one direction. That kind of helps me control where this paint's going, and I'm only going to catch certain areas. Here's the Mini after that pink horror highlight. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some Cadian Fleshtone, and we're going to mix it with Xereus Purple at about a 50-50 ratio, with just a drop or two of Lamian Medium in the mix to make sure that it has a really nice flow. Since I'm going to be using a detail brush, I like to put a drop of clean water on my palette. That just lets me have a really quick way of putting some water into the bristles of my brush in case they start to dry out very quickly, which can happen with the thin detail brushes that we tend to use for minis. Now I'm just painting this in thin little streaks down all of the scales on this back side. The way that the Mini is shaped, it has a lot of these ridges sculpted right into the scales themselves. And we're just going to exaggerate them by doing all of our highlighting from now on in these little streaks. This is something that you might also see on like a Tyrannid carapace. It just kind of gives it that textured look that's really kind of visually interesting. It's a very time-consuming process that can get a little bit repetitive, but it can also get kind of meditative at the same time. As I transition to this area around the mouth, I want to catch all of the little sculpted ridges where the teeth protrude from the mouth, and then I'm also going to catch these smaller scales that are on the jaw. And then on the areas where I kind of feel like the lip is starting to transition into the mouth, I'm going to do some more of that streaky highlight. All right, here's the worm after we've done that highlight of the Genestealer Cadian mix. We're going to do one final highlight using just pure Cadian Fleshtone mixed with a little bit of Lamian Medium. And we're going to apply this in the same streaky manner. We're just kind of being more selective about where we put it. We really just want to highlight the middle of these scales, especially in the areas that would see the most sun. I also want to go and add an extra highlight to the areas where the teeth come out, kind of along the gum line, and then make sure that the nose is nice and bright since that is the highest area and would be the brightest. And I really want to get all these cracks along the head as well. All right, here is the purple step completed on this purple worm. This is something you could use for your own worm mini or for Tyrannids or anything else that kind of has a scaled carapace along the back. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked my video, I have another one where I'm going to show you how to paint the inside of the mouth of this mini in the MiniWarGaming Vault, and the link down below in the description. If you don't already have a Vault membership, you can go ahead and click the link. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial and get access to my video as well as hundreds of other videos in the MiniWarGaming Vault. So go ahead, click the link, start your free trial, and happy wargaming!